Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I have to tell you, this is such a wonderful event. It's our third night, and it just keeps getting better and better. The Tour for Diversity lives up to its mission. It's inspiring. I want to join this traveling show. It's not only inspiring, it does educate our registrants, and believe me, your job tonight is to cultivate them so that they know they belong in the health professions. Thank you to my colleagues at Temple and to all of my colleagues here in Philadelphia. I am so proud to share this with you. Thank you, Dr. Matthews. It's all yours. You're still muted.
And I do that all day at work. How many of us do that all day, every day, right? So sorry. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on night three. Again, I'm Dr. Cameron Matthews. I am one of the co-founders and co-directors of the Tour for Diversity in Medicine, a family doc located in DC and part of the VA administration. I am so excited. We have a very standard curriculum that we usually bring to our students, but our partnership with Temple and this panel that I am about to bring to you students is a completely different level. I'm going to ask all of our guests from the multiple universities across Philadelphia to turn on their cameras and join us. My goodness, I am so excited. We have representation across all of the major universities across the city. For those of you we haven't met yet, I'm from Philly, so I am so excited about this. I probably, did something at one of your universities at some point or another throughout my crazy career, and it's really great to have all of you here. It's been a fun and I think highly educational past couple of nights. We have had students that are really digging deep into some great topics, not just about themselves and how they apply, but their space in healthcare. There, are questions about race and racism. We actually have a workshop about that later tonight and everything. So I completely anticipate that we might actually have some challenging questions for all of you. So hopefully you won't get too turned off by that, because it's not me, it's them. I love it. But that's the whole point of this platform. So what I'm going to do, because we have such a good number of you, I want to make sure that you each have the ability to introduce yourself, but I also want to give you a question as well too. So everybody bear with us because there's a lot of information to share. If I can just remind everybody, let's try to stay as brief as possible, because I would also love, in the space of an hour, to open it up to Q&A from some of the students, right? But I also want to make sure you can, share information from your own university, your own experience as well too, because your personal stories are just as telling and motivating for our students. So I've crafted a set of questions, and I'm going in I literally just pulled together in random order, no sort of priority and everything. So just bear with me and I apologize in advance if I'm mispronouncing any names or heaven forbid, missing any titles. All right. So starting with Dr. Ufberg, our Associate Dean for Admissions from the Lewis Katz School of Medicine. If you don't mind introducing yourself, and then I'd love for you to just jump into the nitty gritty. You, of course, are looking at applications. You are, of course, considering students from all over, not just the world, not just Philly, but like the globe, most likely. What do you tell students? What do you hone in on? Like, we keep telling them everything's important, but is that really true? And what advice would you give our students?
Oh boy, and I have to do this quickly.
I told you it was hard.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. First of all, I go by Jay Ufberg. I am the Associate Dean for Admissions at Temple. As Dr. Matthews said, I'm also an emergency physician here at Temple University Hospital. So is everything important? Everything on your application is important, as in, the detail is important. But I think, what we are looking for is passion. And so we want people not to check boxes, not to say, okay, one from the research box, one from the community service box, but we want people to dive into what they are personally passionate about. And if that means tons and tons of community service, but not a heck of a lot of research. That's okay. So we want people to be genuine, to be who they are, and to be passionate and really dive into the thing that drives them, that is motivating them to medicine. And I think that is, at least for me, that's what I want to see in an application, more than what I may jokingly sometimes call a dabbler, somebody who is kind of trying to just check each of the boxes with some minimal amount of activity.
Perfect, perfect. Passion. I love it. Thank you for reiterating that. We agree wholeheartedly, and we actually have talked about that a couple of times. Questions have come up. They're asking, well, how many volunteer hours? How many clinical hours? We're like, all right, this isn't about checking off boxes. This is about showing the big picture, right? All right. Thank you so much for that, Jay. All right, jumping ahead, Ms. Adrienne Jones, our Chief Admissions Officer from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I would love for you to just expand upon this a little bit. When you get that application in, what kind of expectations do you have? I mean, yes, it's paper, well, not paper, it's electronic in front of you, and there's a lot of information there. And like Jay said, you want to see the passion and everything, but what are you really digging into when you're reviewing, right? From an admissions officer standpoint, is there anything that jumps out at you? Are there any negatives that, like, red flags or anything? Like, what can you tell us about that kind of maybe administrative process? Is more than that. I don't mean to demean that, but what are you looking for?
Absolutely. So thank you, first of all, for inviting me here to present. And I think one of the things that I talk to my team about a lot as we review files, and even with the doctors that we're sitting on these panels with and we're reviewing files, is we're looking for the human being behind the paper. And to think about how much time went into building all those prerequisites and writing that essay. So I first start to look at the family, like where they come from and who are their mentors. I look also to see, of course, the academic information is kind of a conglomerate that's put there in front of me, but I get to that actually last. I really don't want to worry so much about our process, which is blind, is separate. So we're not seeing any academic information when you're doing your interviews. And so you really have time to kind of blow life into all of it together. So when I see it, it's all assembled in front of me. And I'm a non-voting member, ex officio, of the admissions committees over the 3 campuses that make the PCOM campus. So I have an opportunity to bring in a more holistic approach, which I really love, looking at those mentors and looking at where they did their shadowing. One of the things I would say to students is the way you describe your experience at each of the areas where you talk about your healthcare hours, your work, how you, the very words that you use to describe these experiences, it's very important. It's important to elaborate. It's also good to summarize and be succinct, and to use strong words that show your passion and describe that commitment that Dr. Oberg just talked about. I look then again at the schools that students went to, not so much for how competitive they are, but I look at the overall experience, because sometimes we get students who are not coming from a traditional science background. They may come from dance, they may come from liberal arts. So you're looking for ways in which, you're building doctors, literally, or you're building PAs and the different programs where students are going to apply. So there's not just one look that you're looking for. As well, in today's world in 2020, we have health teams. So you need different things and you need different personalities. So I love to see music in there, and I love to see dance, because these are areas where students will use those aspects of the application to work through stress and to stay healthy, because you are your brand. So every piece of the application gives you a way to pull the puzzle together. And of course, you're going to spend a lot of time looking at MCAT scores or GREs or whichever program you're applying to, and the kinds of prerequisites are made. But when you look at the overall picture, you're looking for the human and what was their experience. How did they enjoy the volunteer hours? How does that come through? And it does speak to you. And each of the times it gives you a human element at the end.
Oh, I love it. It's perfect. And it fits so much. Students, if you remember yesterday, we had outside the numbers workshop where we totally focused, like, let's skip the MCAT and the GPA right now. Let's think about you as a picture. Let's think about the humanity in you. Thank you so much for that. That's perfect. All right. Next, Ms. Linda Berardi Demo from Drexel University College of Medicine, our Associate Dean for Admissions. Sticking with the application process, one area that we actually do a workshop on, but didn't do it this week. And students are regularly asking about is the interview. You know, how do you do it? How should I practice? You know, how should I present myself? One student was even, I'm really quiet and shy. Is this going to be a problem? What kind of advice do you give a student like that, or just in general about the interview?
Well, the interview isn't obviously a very important part of the process. And if you make it to the interview, you really want to knock it out of the park, right? It's your opportunity to bring it all together. The best advice I give students is to read your application. So read whatever you submitted to that school, whatever you submitted on either to AMCAS or COMOS or whatever application service, and also know a little bit about the school. It's unfortunate when students interview and they ask questions that are readily available on the website. So you want to know the school. And you got to think about the things that you highlighted in your application that you thought were important. Be prepared to be asked about those, right? Be able to talk about those things, be able to share the things that you think are important, that you want the admissions committee or anyone your interviewer to walk away with. It's easy to be nervous, right? Because it's a big deal. So it is easy to be nervous. I encourage students to practice, not be rehearsed, right? Not, especially with Zoom. I'm sure some of my colleagues on the call will tell you that with Zoom, we're interviewing people that I know are like reading something from the screen. And, you know, we want you to have thought about things. So practice, you know, trying on some of those questions that might be tough for you. If you had a hiccup, if you've been out of school, if there was something that you feel like you might be asked, practice, at least think about those. But what you really want to do is, and I think this is, I'm probably the third person to say this, is share your enthusiasm. We want to see that passion and enjoy the ride. Like, it should be a fun process. And I know sometimes people are nervous, but this is your opportunity for us to really see that passion for you to bring your application to life.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. Passion, passion, passion. I love it. And practice. I think that actually shocks more students when I see their face and I'm like, you can practice interviewing. There's a way to actually get good at this. We're not all good at being on a Zoom, obviously. You can do it. Thank you for that. All right. Dr. Martin, Dr. David Martin, our Dean for Admissions at the Temple University School of Podiatric Medicine. I remember I told you we have one of your amazing graduates with us on the tour, Dr. Kitra Owens. We absolutely love her. Like, my goodness, I told you she has encouraged more students than I could think of to go into podiatry. What is it about podiatry that like our students should know, right? Because unfortunately, the case is still a lot of times they're learning about it in a setting like this, right? They're typically not as exposed, but it's such an amazing field to go into. They are doing unbelievable surgeons. I mean, our other Dr. Ebony Vincent, you see her on TV. She's amazing. I'm meeting more and more students that want to be her. That's what we need. We need that exposure. But what exactly is it about podiatry that you want students to know to try to convince them to come?
Well, certainly, first and foremost, there definitely is a viable option for folks who are pursuing a health profession's career. I know oftentimes it's not at the forefront of your thought process in terms of when folks think about, okay, I'm going to a health profession's career. And so what typically attracts students to our program is that the balance that it offers. You know, the balance in terms of having the ability to perform surgical procedures, of course, on the lower extremity, but the subsurface bony type surgical procedures, the ability to impact folks' quality of life, particularly when you know that in this country, there's a diabetes epidemic where approximately 10% of the population, adult population, are estimated to be diabetics. And so what you are able to do is to impact their lifestyle. You're keeping them ambulatory. And so you are able to be involved in some complex surgical procedures, but not necessarily life-threatening. And then in terms of the balance is that typical podiatric physicians, they work about 50 hours a week on average.
That's nice.
Yes. And so, so folks find that, attractive. Again, you're able to do surgery, get into some complex issues, not necessarily life and death. And then it's that other piece is that for that diabetic patient, It has some characteristics of a primary care physician in that you're going to be interacting with that diabetic patient probably for the duration of their life.
Mhm.
And so they might come to you if they're being compliant a couple of times a year for their assessments, their visits with you, their well visits, if you will. And so you're able to establish a relationship, a rapport with that individual.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. I never thought of that, but that's comparing or really balancing podiatry as more of a primary care. I love to think of everything as primary care, to be honest, but that's a brilliant comparison there. Thank you. All right. Who do I have next on my list? Ms. Joanne Nyquist, our Associate Dean for Diversity at the Temple University Nuremberg School of Dentistry. We also have two amazing dentists on our tour. I don't know if, hopefully none of you guys have spent your evenings with us watching this, but Deirdre Young is out in Detroit. Yes, I told you, everybody knows Deirdre. She's amazing. So what do you tell students, separate from needing to choose dentistry, how do they get prepared for the rigor of dental school? Because in my mind, I feel like, I don't know, but especially the docs on the panel, sometimes I think of dentistry school as being even harder because my dental colleagues are trained in business practice and operate. It's so much bigger than just the clinical practice of dentistry. Plus they take all the medical school classes. Plus they learn more about the mouth than I ever was told. How do students get prepared for dental school?
Well, first of all, Deidre is a friend of mine because I'm from Detroit.
There you
I
go.
was an educator in the city of Detroit, and yes, she's amazing. And I am honored to be here and grateful. And I also want to mention that I am the director of the Post-Baccalaureate program. And that has been we are so unique in the country. So that you talk about how do you best prepare students. Our program started 6 years ago. We're in our 6th class. And all our students have to have shadowing experience, and that's just watching. Some come from dental families, so they might have more experience. Some are also dental assistants or dental hygienists. So they have a little more of a step in front of the others. Mm-hmm. So when they come in with both our post-baccalaureate and DMD program, they don't have that hands-on, the motor skills. And I've been in dental education for a long time. And it's those students who have the high GPA and the test scores. And then they come into the preclinic lab where they're working with teeth, a small area, dental instruments, and now with all the headgear. But we have a diverse and amazing faculty, mentoring, and tutoring program, after hours, weekends, to help those students build those skills, those who, again, have the academics but need more time. Mm-hmm. And they could, sometimes they don't have the confidence, but the support systems that Kornberg School of Dentistry gives these students is amazing. And I will say, because of our urban location, the size of our dental class, the patients that we serve have so much dental work to be done. Our students have, in comparison, a much higher level of clinical experience, graduation requirements, and competencies compared to other schools that do not have what we have. And that is, I think, one of our most important advantages. So the tutoring, the mentoring, the after hours, the weekends to give those students those hand skills. They have 2 years in the preclinic course in the lab. They come in, they get a clinic mentor who is third year moving into fourth year student. They work with them, they guide them, and the number of our students that go on to residencies and specialty programs is amazing. And our post-baccalaureate program is specific to dentistry. Students take pre-dental courses the first year. They have a dental assisting lab course, and they come in the fall and winter and assist the third and fourth year dental students in the restorative clinics and all our specialty clinics. We now have gained admission to 28 dental schools. So in 5-6 years, our students are all over the country, and they keep saying, had they not had this post-baccalaureate program, one, they may not have gained admission, but secondly, they wouldn't have had that pre-dental development to make them successful. And the other piece that for those who are listening, the students, we have found that our students and the leadership opportunities, they gain that self-confidence in that post-baccalaureate program. They come in, they step up, and they're on student council, they're class leaders. So we're really proud of all the supports we give students. So that's a lot of words to talk about, but we are very aware, and especially during the pandemic, that students need more resources and the support of faculty and student mentors. And being the Associate Dean for Student Affairs, I have partnered with so many different departments outside of the dental school to provide support and programming for our students. They're so appreciative. And finally, I want to say student well-being. Because when you are working with your hands and in a small confined area, and you get that feeling of not getting it, student well-being is so important to balance the academics.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It sounds, first of all, your post-bac sounds amazing. Your program sounds amazing. And it sounds like, choose a school that's going to support you, that's going to encourage you, that, of course, there's a level of rigor that is required in order to get admitted, but it's about the support system that you have in play to make sure that you're successful once you get there. And that's what it sounds like your school does. That's amazing. All right, Dr. Sasso, Assistant Dean for Admissions with the Sidney Kimmel Medical College. I'm gonna get a little personal on this one, if you don't mind. Not personal to you, but for our students, particularly for students of color. There is significant concern about being accepted, not to the school, but accepted as a person, as an entity within the field of healthcare, within the field of medicine. There's concern, like Ms. Nyquist said, about support, about mentoring. What would you share about your university? My dad's a graduate of Jeff. I love it, so I know it. What would you share about Jeff that really should be something that maybe the students are looking for in general as they're applying? Again, because you definitely there's a sense of nervousness, I think, even in a lot of the questions that we've gotten from students. So what should they be looking for?
I think you should look for something where there's a structure of support. And one thing, I was a student when I was Jefferson Medical College, and when I came back about 10 years ago, a lot of structure was added in to really support and mentor students. So I'm glad a lot of you mentioned mentorship, because that is so important. We have an Office of Diversity Inclusion Initiative, and there's actually structure, pipeline programs, things that are going on to really have people work together, students, residents, faculty, and staff. And then one of their goals is to really engage with community. So I think students really need to look at not only what are the supports for them as students, but how does the university engage with the community around it? How do they approach health equities with their own patients? Because I think all students have some obstacles that they faced and they've tried to overcome. And I think that they do need the help and support that's offered. One thing that, I thought was really great about our institution is recognizing our very imperfect past, very late in the game, admitting Black students, very late in the game, admitting women. And, you have to actually address that and not hide it under the rug and say it didn't exist. And we actually had this curriculum retreat recently where the title was Race and Bias in Medical Education, Conversion to Action. And we looked at every piece of the curriculum and not what's going on, but how can it be improved, and recognizing that you're never going to be static. So students should look at, what does the curriculum look like, but also what improvements are being made, and year to year is the place changing and improving. And we actually are doing a diversity inclusion timeline to just really address our past, but also address our present and where we're going in the future.
Oh, that's so perfect. That's perfect. Dr. Michelle Schmude, Associate Dean for Admissions with the Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. Thank you for being here. All of this sounds so dead accurate, having gone through the process myself. What should you look for? It was all the stuff that I just got positive out of my own medical school experience. And though I feel like I got that information from like the interview day, now that we're in this virtual environment, right? How are you suggesting when, students are asking, how can we connect with you? How can we connect with students? How can we feel the vibe? I'm not feeling much vibe through Zooms nowadays, right? How are you connecting and allowing students to connect with you?
Sure. So thank you very much. And I want to acknowledge you are only the third person since I've been married, and I got married in 1996, who has actually pronounced my last name correctly right out of the gate. So I want to acknowledge that, because I usually just let it go. And so I thought, and one of them actually was a distant cousin of my husband. So anyway, so I digress. So back to the virtual interview. Well, I actually look at the virtual interview as an opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity because I believe it's providing more access to more individuals. And so my background as first generation disadvantaged student, I came from a household of divorce. My parents were divorced and we lived below the poverty line. And so I know what it was like to have one meal a day, eat a pack of ramen noodles and not have anything else. And, have literally a quarter when I went to the University of Pittsburgh. And I can't imagine how, if I was going to medical school then and had to fly out to California, how I would fund that. And so with that being said, and using that perspective, I always found it, I was always put off a little with the cost of how much for students for interviewing. They're flying all over the country to engage in this dog and pony show, to produce their best selves during the interview. And it has bothered me. And so when people said, we're going to have to do virtual interviews, I looked at it as an opportunity that students who might not have been able to come to my institution from California, Texas, Florida, or even, from 5 hours away because they couldn't afford a hotel, or they couldn't afford a flight, or they couldn't afford gas, can actually now do that. So I think that it has had a lot of benefits for students, and it's given them so many more opportunities. It's also allowed us to see more students and provide that opportunity to them. The second point I'd like to make is that you are right. So you're not on campus, you're not in this big group of individuals, but, in your breakout rooms, creating that sense of community too is really important. And so we do try to do that, having our students engage with our students, having them doing a walking tour actually while we're in the interview day, having faculty available for follow-up, faculty in additional sessions. So we are doing whatever we need to in order to personalize the day, because we know that it is about fit as well. So they're interviewing us just like we're interviewing them, and it has to be a fit both ways. And so we want to be able to showcase that to students. And then I would just follow up by saying that, you know, unfortunately, I don't believe that anyone's going to be able to host on-campus second visit days or things of that nature. Maybe they'll be able to do it in the summer. Who knows? You know, that's probably wishful thinking. So in reality, the first time a student will probably set foot on your campus is the first day of orientation. And so I think it's really important to know that, you know, the students that we're interviewing, great job. The students that we're accepting, we want you to be a part of our class, and we're going to do everything that we can to make you feel like this is the fit, and you're part of our community.
I love it. I love it. It sounds like you've been creative and you've really gone all out to make those connections. This is such an awkward new world, right? But it sounds like we're finding ways to, it's got to happen, right? We're going to do it. This is great. All right. Last but not least, I hate that you're last, Ms. Watkins. Ms. Paula Watkins, Dean for Admissions with Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine. We came and visited you guys. I don't know if you were around when the tour came through, when we were still actually traveling face to face, but we came around to Rowan, and it was great up there. I would love to get into, it's a little more specific, although I'm probably being specific with every question. One that has come up like crazy, and honestly, please answer, and then anyone else jump in, because this is a pretty big concept. How are you advising students that are nervous about the costs of medical school? That is a pretty big barrier, right? And where we're talking about students of disadvantaged backgrounds, like Dr. Schmoody just said, I mean, this is major reason to not consider any professional school. I mean, even a single year program, 2-year program could be a lot in comparison. How are you talking to them just about the nervousness of finances?
So, Dr. Matthews, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here, and really appreciate your being here. And remember when the Tour for Diversity came on the Rowan S1 campus, and so this is a privilege. But you are absolutely correct. Medical education is extremely costly, and getting costlier. You know, I agree. We agree that, you know, virtual is the way to go. The way we're advising students, to be very honest with you, is to find the school that's the best fit and that's going to be the best fit for you financially, to be very honest with you. And with that, or do they offer you scholarships? What are they looking for? And how are they evaluating you? I mean, I can tell you that at Rowan SOM, we use a holistic review process. So we're blinding our interviewers to the metrics, and we don't see anything. And it allows us to consider a student's attributes and their experiences, which are extremely valuable in the assessment of an applicant. And then on top of that, how can they enhance our community? How can they enhance our student body, make us a better school, you know, strengthen us, bring in a diverse perspective that will allow students the opportunity, right, to gain from that diverse perspective. And then after that, how do we get them here? And of course, if in fact our admissions committee believes that they're going to be an asset and they're a great student, then we want to offer them a scholarship. And medical schools have scholarships. We actually have merit-based, need-based scholarships and endowed scholarships. And so we have donors who, through the foundation at Rowan University, provide opportunities for students to receive a scholarship based on some specific criteria. Often that's maybe a commitment to serving the underserved, coming from an underserved background. Maybe even the student is in a liberal arts program and they've decided that they want to do medicine, so they've taken on additional science courses, but there's diverse perspectives. So we would encourage students to talk to the financial aid office, talk to the admissions officers, talk about how important it is for them to be a physician. Why? What are their contributions to medicine? In many cases, they might try to participate in a loan forgiveness program. There are many of those where you can work in an underserved community. So the goals of the student, you know, if they meet our mission, and we believe our mission is really to care for the underserved communities and special needs populations. At Rowan SOM, part of our mission is to train culturally competent, clinically skillful, compassionate physicians for New Jersey and the nation. And so if in fact we meet students who meet that mission, it is really our responsibility, we feel, to provide the student with as much support and resources as possible. So there are many medical schools. And at the end of the day, obviously you want to be a physician, you want to go to a place where you're supported, where you're valued, where you feel like you can make contributions, and that's important. We think that's important, so we look for students like that. But in addition to looking for that, we would encourage students to find out whether or not scholarships are available. And then in addition to retention scholarships or recruitment scholarships, there are scholarships that students can receive as a current medical student that oh my goodness, students, they're ongoing. You know, you could be in a student organization, you may have an interest in emergency medicine or family medicine, whatever that might be. There are numerous scholarships. At Rowan SOM, we also have a clinical practice. So a lot of our physicians are interested in nominating students that they believe may be a good fit for a particular specialty area, where that student demonstrates their interest in that area. Community service is a big deal. So there are many scholarships available to students who demonstrate leadership in community service opportunities. So I heard one of the panelists talk about, making sure that they're clear about their mission, their goals, that they give a voice to the experiences that they've had as they apply to medical school. And that's really important because admissions offices and committee members may actually be interested in those experiences and want to support students based upon their commitment to the mission, or maybe furthering the mission. And so I would tell students to consider medical schools that focus on providing you good support, but also are interested in helping you to keep your debt load down and finding ways where you can finance your education without going into a large amount of debt.
Love it. Excellent advice. And thank you for mentioning kind of the possibilities after admissions, right? There's of course scholarships and the like, but later on as well too, even into your career. I did the National Health Service Corps loan repayment program. I am a huge benefactor of just getting free money later. I love it. So love it. Please, I see a question.
I wanted to follow up on that because one of the things, especially being involved with student affairs, is once they come in, is to make sure that we give them as much information to prepare them for graduation. At the very beginning, yes, they may not have gotten scholarships, but we partner with a financial aid information service. Some of you may have heard of this. I'll share it. He's amazing. We bring him in every year. Is Paul Gerard, and his company is PG Presents. And we start right at orientation, and then every year he comes in, and particularly near graduation, to advise students about what are the new regulations, the new laws, and now with
like a personal finance.
Yes.
Person? Okay, excellent.
Has a listserv for our graduates after that keeps going for a year to help them. The other is we offer so many career development programs where we bring in specialists, dentists, large corporations, even hospitals, to make them aware of opportunities. So they're not just worried about where am I going to work? Where am I going to get a job? And the other that's really turned out important for us is mentoring with alumni. And we do that from the beginning. And they bring them to their offices, they meet with them, they talk to them, they share opportunities. And we bring in organizations like the National Service Corps right at the beginning. So at least it gives them that information. Communication, especially now, is so important with students.
Exactly. Oh, great things. It's students, definitely great things to ask about. These are 8 amazing representatives of unbelievable schools giving you guys advice of what you should be looking for. Thank you. I can't believe we just got through all 8 of this. So we have some questions from students now. This is the fun part. All right. So very first question, what are some common characteristics of a weak application? We were stressing what's positive, but what do you see that kind of makes you cringe a little bit even? I'll let anybody speak. Please, Ms. Jones.
So initially I mentioned that, the humanness of your application is coming through, and a weak application, the words don't really speak to the passion for applying, which we know it's a culmination of gathering all those details and you didn't do the research. Maybe we were asked you a specific question that just really popped on the application and we knew we were looking for an answer. And you, for example, don't answer the question about OMM, osteopathic medicine. You have no concept between an allopathic doctor and an osteopathic doctor, and you can't really talk about it in writing. And my next thought is maybe I can't wait to see what the interviewer said because I got nothing. If someone opens the door and says, tell me about your experience with COVID, for example, that's a question that many of us have on our applications, how it's impacted your journey. Please don't skimp on that space. Really fill it. Think about what you lost, what you've gained, what you've learned, and really take the time to think about the questions that you're being asked. It really comes through that you've been thoughtful in your answers. They're not like cut and paste from somewhere and you just threw it in there. Excuse me, that is something that it's like you can tell a face. Like is this the test application somebody gave me? We really do take the time to thoroughly read, and I always read relaxed, and I just am so excited every time I open one and I go, wow, I missed something there. So it carries weight. And so take your time and really, share that experience. If you're concerned about it, stop for a minute and really take your time to build the application. It's more than just seeing, like I said, MCAT scores that aren't maybe at a 50 percentile or higher, whatever your thought process is about that. It's all the other things that you underestimated counted show up in this evaluation.
Exactly. Any other?
I would like to add, all of our disciplines focus on the field of service and serving others. And so it's a red flag when you see all these great experiences and the individuals don't talk about others. They only talk about what they personally gained instead of what they're doing for others. So in clinical experiences, if you're not talking about, physician creating a longitudinal relationship or a relationship using communication skills to connect with people, or your community service activities are all about you, you then begin to wonder, okay, you're engaging in these experiences, who are you engaging with? And why exactly are you doing it? And so a lot of people talked about the narrative and getting to know the individual through all of your application materials. And I would just say, think about those things, because it's not all about you. It's about how you've engaged in the experiences and what you've done to others and how you've grown from that. So it's not just about what I got out of it, right? So just if we're really talking about humanistic medicine, that's sort of, I guess, a global perspective that I would want to add.
That's so smart too, because you would think, or a student may think that, it's an application about me. I need to prove myself, but clearly this is more, this field is not about you, it's about serving others. Exactly. Great point to make. All right. This question came up both of the last nights, so would love any perspective here. How will shadowing or volunteering requirements be adjusted in this next cycle due to the pandemic? Tons of students asking, how do we find shadowing experiences? Where can we volunteer? No one's, taking any help. Are things going to adjust? What are you recommending to students?
Well, I would like to say, I know with our dental students, they ask. It happened last summer when they were applying in this cycle. And the ones that I told them to go back to their own communities and search out where the needs are. And I had more students come back and say, I had no idea. There was so much here.
Mhm.
So asking them to look in their own backyard where they are. Dental offices weren't open right away. They found them. And it didn't have to be, we encouraged them, it didn't have to be related to dentistry.
Love it. Love it. Dr.
And
Martin,
so-
yeah.
So yes, we are providing waivers for that typical requirement of needing to have that in-person experience shadowing
Mhm.
podiatric physician.
Mhm.
However, we are also providing alternatives, such as the virtual. We do a winter or summer internship program.
Oh,
This winter internship program, our students got to view a live surgery. And so they also have the opportunity to further interact with doctors through our National Podiatric Medical Association. They have a national mentoring program through the American Podiatric Medical Association. And then there's some docs who are from the National Podiatric Medical Association who are serving as mentors and opportunity to shadow them virtually. And so actually it's actually providing additional opportunities to interact with somebody who might be practicing in a particular structure that if you may not have had as much access previously. So if you interact virtually with 3 doctors, they might have 3 different practice structures. So it might actually serve as a benefit to you because you're getting a better perspective in terms of practice opportunities in terms of this virtual aspect.
that's great that you're offering that. I wasn't aware. We got to put that up on our website. Love it. Love it. Any other thoughts?
I wanted
was
to share.
going to add-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say stay involved and be creative. Don't just say I stayed in my living room watching Netflix, because there are ways of being creative. I have a couple post-bacc students and college students who virtually shadow me in pediatrics. So they're there on FaceTime, seeing patients with me, and you can make masks. We've had students giving virtual patient instructions to new parents in the nursery. So don't go, it's not the time to be quiet and keep to yourself. Just constantly look for ways and ask some of your advisors, or even ask the admissions offices or student affairs offices, what else should I be doing?
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, if it's okay. And that is that, as soon as COVID hit, we have a clinical practice and our physicians began doing telehealth and telemedicine. So, I would agree to reach out to the admissions offices because we can connect clinical faculty with prospective students in that way. And that was a really great experience, because what COVID has identified is that may be another method for providing care and treatment to patients. And so that was a very important opportunity for students. In addition, we've had students who are just very interested in shadowing physicians, and they know that it's difficult in the office. So I've had students say, I reached out to physicians, but they were so interested in the fact that I still wanted to shadow, that there are physicians that allowed them to talk over the phone about their desire to be a physician and what that experience was like. And the committee felt that that was taking the extra step, looking for that individual that was willing to mentor and guide that particular student. So we're, looking at various ways that students can do that. And one other thing I wanted to mention is we're probably all doing this, and that is there are a number of webinars that are being sponsored by the institutions in these medical school and health professions programs, because we are virtual, and they are probably highlighting alumni. I know we are. And so our alumni are doing a number of webinars, and they provide their contact information, their specialty, and their email. And students can absolutely reach out to them and indicate that they saw the webinar, they're interested in shadowing, getting more information and more insight, and they can share those experiences on an application or the admissions committee members.
So do your research. That's what it sounds like. You're all making your schools, your alumni, your students available. Go to the websites and look it up. And I actually do have a slide that I'm going to project with websites of all your universities and everything. And we're going to share that with the students as well too. But be proactive and look it up yourselves. Okay. This is a great question because we typically do get a lot of non-traditional applicants, and coming through your post-bac programs, you're getting the same. What are some things you've seen in applications from non-traditional applicants where medicine would be a second or potentially complementary career that have helped you see them as competitive applicants?
I guess
Jack.
I could jump in, I
Yeah.
suppose. I think one thing that's really important to realize, and some of you probably do, is that non-traditional is the new traditional. So much over the years, our medical student kind of pools have gotten away from being 21-year-old fresh graduates from college, and life experience is great. So I don't know that you need to necessarily sell yourself, or think that you need to do more than others. I think that you highlight what you gain from that experience and how that's going to make you a better physician. So I think to a great degree, that is normal now. Second career, or at least late compared to a college grad to medical school. I guess the other real piece to consider is, I think that at least for us, one of the things we think about is how long you've been out of a classroom setting. So if you have been out for a long time, we're talking 4, 5, 6 years that you've been out of a classroom, that then perhaps sometimes getting back to the classroom to just show that you still have the chops to succeed in that rigorous classroom environment. So that's where, a post-bac, or maybe if you need to keep your job while you're doing this, taking some a couple of credits here, a couple of credits there, taking a tough science class, something like that, I think can just show the committee that they don't have to worry about your ability to get back to the classroom.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I cringe every time I say or read non-traditional, because it's traditional now, right? We need to come up with another phrase, and I often love telling students, I came through the traditional path, but then I went non-traditional and went and got my second degree and everything and came back and graduated late. But the students that were the now traditional were by far the ones that were most focused, that knew exactly what they wanted to get, knew how to study, because sometimes they came in with families or had other careers, so they knew how to manage their time better. Just hands down, I just considered it a huge strength when just in my own classmates and even students since then that I've seen. I see a lot of people nodding. Would you guys agree with that? That a lot of times the non-traditional, whatever that means anymore, are actually stronger students. And yes, Jay, sometimes, they need to get back into the academic grind, but a lot of times that's even easier for them. Love it. Love it. All right. These students are so great. So this is an interesting one. And we tell our students to be prepared for their interviews, to have stories. They need to obviously show their humanity, connect with the interviews. This is a great question. How would emotion be perceived in an interview setting, such as getting choked up about a story that is at the core of what pushed me towards medicine? He says, and it's a huge reason of why he pursued medicine. And he tells it when he's asked why medicine, but he chokes up when he does it. What's kind of gut reaction to that? Or what's some advice when he ends up feeling that emotion come through?
I mean, I'll take a stab at that one if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
So emotion is important, right? We want to see word and deed. We want to hear you talk about it, but we also want to see that you do it. Some emotion is different than losing it, right? You don't want to sob, you don't want to swear, emotion there's a frame of that. I've often met students when they talk about their, reason for medicine might be of losing a family member or someone close to them, and they do show that emotion. but it's still an interview, right? So you still have to have that mindset. If there is something that when you talk about it, you know that it's going to evoke an emotion, then I would practice that. I would try on just, answering that question, just thinking about it, doing it in your head. I encourage students to do it in their phone, just say it out loud and hear how it sounds, just because you want to have tried on those feelings before it's in the big game.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Practice, practice, practice. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we are coming to a close. I want to be extremely respectful to all of you amazing representatives of your school for giving an hour of your evening. We apologize, but we typically do stuff in the evenings to try to grab as many students during their free time as possible. So thank you so much for joining. I just want to read, if you guys aren't looking at the Q&A, we actually got some straight comments, not questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to all of us today and stand as strong advocates for diversity in the field of medicine. That was one student. Another wanted to personally give a special greeting to Dr. Alyssa Lasasa and Paula Watkins. She met you from her Post-Bacc program. You guys make an impact. I really do appreciate all that you do every day. Your students do, and hopefully our future doctors and dentists and podiatrists on the line do as well. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.